Hello, Marcy Forta here, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what to do if your child asks you or says that they are fat. So before we get started, I just wanted to kind of make a point in regards to health. When we talk about the concept of health, it isn't only about our physical health. There are aspects to our health that are psychological, emotional, spiritual, financial, even what types of relationships we have, our sleep patterns, our interaction with our community, even as much as our happiness with our jobs or what we're doing in life. Our health is an all-encompassing concept and topic. And stress in health is a huge part of how healthy we are or are not. The reality is that when we focus so much on what our kids are eating and how much they weigh, we end up putting a tremendous amount of stress on them because some of that is really out of their control. Studies show that the more we restrict and focus on our food and our kids' food, the heavier our children actually become. And the reality is that when you look at markers of health, sometimes we tend to only look at weight or shape, but we know that they are not the only ways that we can measure somebody's health. We need to look at labs and blood work, growth trends, blood pressure, things like sleep, how happy your child is, how adjusted they are, their heart rate, even their leptin levels, how much movement they do. These are all other ways of measuring the health of somebody. So it isn't only about their weight or shape. And sadly, the research shows that diets, especially for children, cause harm in many, many ways. There's mental harm, of course, but there's malnutrition, which is a physical harm. There's low energy that comes from it. There's inflammation, a greater likelihood of gaining weight down the road. The concept of yo-yo dieting, which is, losing and gaining the same few pounds over and over again, which has been shown to be more dangerous than actually just being stable at a higher weight. It can be a cause for eating disorders, disordered eating, anxiety, depression, even suicidality. So we have to be so careful about the concept of dieting in our children. Ellen Satter, who is a very well-known nutritionist and dietitian, has created something called the division of responsibility. And she talks about the fact that when you label your child as overweight and you take steps to remedy that, whether it's direct or indirect, you make your child feel flawed and inferior because it's so tied into their self-confidence and self-esteem. So Ellen Satter has developed something called the division of responsibility model in how we feed our children. And she gives very specific roles to parents and very specific roles to children in the eating and feeding cycle. Parents' jobs, she says, with feeding are to choose and prepare the food that your child gets, to provide regular meals and snacks based on their age group and developmental stage, try to make eating times pleasant, and teach a child how to behave during meal times, what's appropriate and what is not. But you have to learn to trust your child to actually eat the amount he or she needs, to learn to eat the foods that you prepare, to grow predictably in ways that are right for that child, and then, of course, to learn how to behave at meal times. When we're able to kind of develop, and each child is going to be a little bit different. I'm not saying there's one model that works for everybody, as we know with all types of things with our children, but we can help them develop something called eating competence. And this is about them being positive around their food, comfortable with eating, flexible, and they feel that they can rely on the fact that they're going to get enough food and enough enjoyable and nourishing food that is needed. And so it has been proven actually to improve in multiple areas of well-being for your child. The studies show that children with eating competence actually eat more fruits and vegetables, and they are more joyful and positive about eating in general. They have the same or lower BMI than kids their age. They are more self-accepting, are more active. They tend to sleep better and longer, have better medical profiles and labs, and they have less overeating and are less picky and are more willing to try new foods. So it has a lot of benefits. It might be something worth looking into if you're struggling with your child. If you have a few minutes afterwards to go to Ellen Satter. Now, unfortunately, we've really been taught that in order to be good parents, we have to feed our kids quote unquote healthy foods. And have our kids move their body in certain ways and be a certain size. And I don't always love the word healthy foods. We've talked about this before, and I'm not going to go into it today, but I prefer the terms nourishing foods or fun foods for foods that might not be as nourishing as others, because all foods have value at different points and different times, just for different reasons. And so this pressure that we have to be these good parents can be passed on to our children. And studies show that it has actually had the opposite effect. In fact, in homes that they have more restrictive feeding practices and weight talk, it actually has been shown to hamper a child's ability to listen to their own hunger and satiety cues. So they tend to either undereat or overeat or use food not just for nourishment, but for emotional, emotional regulation as well. The truth is, we're not really in charge of our child's weight. And this is according to Anna Lutz, who's a nationally recognized family feeding specialist. We don't have complete control over our child's weight. However, we can help them make good choices. We can feed them good things that we are in charge of, but not necessarily the set point of their weight that comes from a lot of different places. So we have to support our children in gaining those skills, knowledge, the confidence, the peace, the independence with food so that they can grow to be competent and healthy eaters. And so we need to give our kids that level of support and learning to trust themselves about food. All right. And our job, of course, as parents is to lead by example. So just like we make mistakes, our children will make mistakes learning new things along the way. We have to give them some latitude to make those mistakes with food and learn how to correct them and connect with their bodies again. And then this trust and belief in their ability to eat well and take care of themselves will actually spill over into all areas of their life and help in their emotional and mental well-being in many places. So let's get into what to do if your child says, I am fat. So the first thing I would say to do is to find out what it is fat means to that child. What does that mean? Because sometimes fat means to them something negative with their friends or how they feel about themselves. It doesn't have to do with the size of their body. It actually has to do with something else that is going on with them. And if they're talking about going on a diet, so where did you hear that? Why do you feel that you need to go on a diet? What does a diet mean to you? I think it's really important that we let kids know that there is a need for fat on our bodies. And it helps protect our organs. It helps our brains grow and develop. So we have to understand, why is the concept of fat a bad thing? We tend to think of fat as bad and thin as good. And this can actually be developed in children as young as 3 years old. So we kind of need them to understand that these are just adjectives. They're not inherently good or bad. So why is the word fat something that she considers bad? We want them to focus on how to respect their bodies and care for them. So we want to talk about how amazing their bodies are and all the wonderful things their bodies do for them. The reality is, in life, when you respect something and you value it, then you take care of it in a whole different way, right? So we need them to understand how valuable their body is to them and their development in this world. And so it's so important that they take care of it properly and not denigrate it and talk badly about it. That said, it's still really important to validate that the hurt they might be feeling. You can validate the hurt, but you're not going to reinforce that there might be something wrong with their body or that their body might not appear the way it's meant to appear. You could say something like, we live in a society where sometimes we feel we have to look a certain way, but that's simply not true. Hashem created you just as you're supposed to look, and your job is to properly take care of this amazing body that He's given you. So it's kind of like empowering your child, because you want them to understand that just because someone said something to them, it doesn't mean they have to respond to that or believe it, actually. They have the ability to question it. Well, it doesn't serve me, or this doesn't make sense to me. And we need to let our children know, of course, that when you change yourself to make another person happy or to look at you a different way, it doesn't make them leave you alone, and it doesn't make you happy. You have to, when you're trying to conform to what others want from us, we end up being unhappy, in fact, and feeling worse about ourselves. We want them to want to make changes for themselves to feel better overall, not just look in the mirror a different way, but to actually feel better about themselves. And it's necessary to kind of reinforce the message that they are so much more than what they look like. They have so many talents, abilities, capabilities, qualities, character traits that are just so much more important. Their weight and appearance is actually the least interesting thing about them in reality. And we have to let them know that commenting on other people's bodies is not something that we ever do. We don't compliment people on a weight loss or a weight gain or their appearance in general, because we don't know what's underlying what went into that weight loss or weight gain or what happened to them. Sometimes people lose weight or gain weight when they're under a tremendous amount of stress, or when they're on certain medications, or they're undergoing an illness. So we don't really know the story. So we kind of should be staying away from those kinds of conversations. It doesn't mean you can't tell someone they look nice. It just means that we shouldn't be having comments about people's bodies all the time. And oftentimes, like we said, you have to explore the word fat. It can be a word that is used when they're masking other underlying feelings. Perhaps they're feeling more anxious for whatever reason. They're struggling with their peers, or they're struggling academically, or there's something else going on with them. Or it could be a gateway word for depression. So I think it's really important that you kind of explore with them, what does fat mean to you, and what is it you're exactly trying to say? They have to kind of dig a little deeper. You're going to have to encourage that to explore those feelings and emotions. And of course, you need to let them know that they don't have to change their body, that changing their body doesn't change the underlying feelings that they have about themselves. The only way to change the feelings that you have about yourselves is to think about yourself in a whole different way. Um, and, you know, that consistency is so critical. You have to be so careful how you model your relationship with your body, and also the messages that you give your child about your body should be extremely consistent. Do not falter if possible. Of course, we all make mistakes, but try to be as consistent as possible. And truly, if you don't have an immediate answer, feel free to say, this is a really important question and I'm going to look into that for you and get back to you. There's nothing wrong with that, because you want to make sure that you give them the right message. And of course, enjoy all kinds of food around your child so that they see that, you know, there's appropriate time and place for all kinds of food. If your teen specifically asks you outright, am I fat? I think you need to explore again with them why they think fat is a bad thing. What does fat mean exactly? Does it make you a bad person? Does it make you unlikable, unlovable? You know, what is it about fat that you think is such a bad thing? And of course, this unconditional love that you have for them, let them feel it, let them know it, that you accept and love their body no matter what the size, that, you know, being overweight or being fat, there's nothing wrong with it. I love you no matter what. Don't try to fix it for them and tell them that you're going to, you know, start a diet program with them, or put them on a diet, or take them to Weight Watchers. Unless they ask to have you do something for them, don't reinforce that message that there's something wrong with their body by telling them you'll help them fix it, because that just tells them, once again, yes, actually, even though you're saying nothing's wrong with me, you're telling me that I need to be fixed. You have to kind of let them guide you in how they would like to handle that. That's not for you to do. And I think, you know, when you talk about food in front of them, talk about how food isn't just about the ingredients in what you're eating or what's on your plate. Food is the art of many experiences, right? It's blended into moments of celebration. It's part of our family rituals, our holidays, our Yom Tovs, our events, our Shabbosim. It's part of a lot of things. So it isn't about food being good or bad, or you being good or bad because you ate certain foods. Food is meant to be enjoyed. And food peace really starts with inner peace. So if someone doesn't like themselves, or doesn't have good feelings about themselves, and is constantly berating themselves or talking down about themselves, chances are they're not going to be able to make that peace with their food. So we have to be really careful what kinds of messages we model to our children. And again, we have to speak to our kids about what healthy eating is. Is it that in order to eat healthy, you have to eat fruits and vegetables, that they're lower in calories, right? Or do we eat fruits and vegetables because truly they support our immune system? They give us vitamins and minerals. They help us grow and be strong. Can we frame it in a more positive way, right? Do we talk about exercise as a weight loss or calorie burning tool? Or do we talk about exercise as something that helps us with our stress, our endurance? It increases our oxygen intake. It helps us grow strong bones. I mean, there are so many more positive ways of talking about things versus negative. So I think it's really important that we kind of make sure to frame things in the right way. And I do think that if you're making some big changes in your home about how you're going to talk to your children, how you're going to feed your children, what kinds of, you know, if you're going to talk about division of responsibility or eating competence, that you also include your spouse. It's important to have these conversations with them. Number one, because you want them to be on board with you, and you don't want to have, you know, disagreements between you and you know, you and him, but also because everyone grew up in a different food environment, right? And everyone has different emotionally charged issues that might go along with their food or eating competence. And so you have to kind of keep them in mind when you're making changes in your home. So stay positive, you know, start with what's being done well, expect a little bit of resistance, right? Because we know changes are very difficult. They're not easy to make. But let's be clear. Clarity is so necessary for everybody in the family, because then they know where they stand and what is expected and what is going to be done. And prioritize. I think, you know, there might be 10 things that you'd like to change, but which one is the first one that you really want to change and is so important to you? And just take that one step at a time. Don't think that you're going to make all these changes at once and then your whole life will change. Change is really hard. Take the time to do it right, and work up to different things. And of course, be kind to yourself, and your partner and your children, because food is a really, like we said, emotionally charged situation. And of course, be appreciative. Um, I also think it's really important to note that bodies change dramatically for children, especially during adolescence. And there are some developments that go on during adolescence that will be relied upon throughout the life of the child and can have long-term implications truly in their physical and mental health. The reality is that peak bone mass is generally achieved by late adolescence, and we rely on this bone mass for the rest of our life. If it hasn't been created solidly, a person could be more susceptible to fractures or breaks when they're older, and so it's really important to get the nutrients that you need from a young age. Cognitive skills are actually being formed and finalized during adolescence, and in order to have those, formed properly, you really do need nutrition. You need enough nourishment and enough calories in order for that to be done. And even during adolescence, children gain approximately 50% of their adult body weight during adolescence. And for the vast majority of people, their height is actually determined by the end of adolescence. So there's massive amounts of growing going on during adolescence. So taking away nourishment and food is not a good plan during that time. Even your heart and lungs are growing. They're increasing in capacity during puberty. And 60% of the brain is composed of fat, adipose, and we need that fat to survive. It's essential for our growth and development. So they have to understand that certain fats are needed and important and valuable. And of course, sleep. So I like to talk a little bit about sleep because it's so critical for your child and teen. Teens generally need between 9 and 10 hours of sleep a night. And without it, they can't pay attention as well. They're more impulsive. They're more irritable. And they tend to eat more. That is the reality. Most adolescents really only get 6 hours of sleep a night. They are the most sleep deprived age group in the world. And without sleep, like we said, it affects their mood, their energy, academic performance, their immune function, their coordination, their alertness. And we have so many things that can affect our sleep patterns. Things like technology, caffeine, that's really a psychoactive drug, actually. It affects perception, cognition, consciousness, mood. Too much caffeine is really not good for you, and late in the day. Social interaction can interrupt sleep if you have phone calls till late at night, stress, of course, and any pain. And really, to finish, I like to talk about the idea that in order for someone to feel full from food, we have to satisfy both our physical hunger and our appetite. So our physical hunger might be, we eat a nice balanced meal of chicken, rice, maybe broccoli, whatever it is. We have a meal, we're actually full, we're satisfied. However, our appetite is something that maybe we want because it's more appetizing to us, which is why we pretty always much have room for dessert. So if your child seems always hungry, perhaps think about tending to their appetite a little bit better, their food enjoyment, and try to create meals that are based a little bit on both nourishment and their physical fullness as well as their appetite, so they don't feel full outside of meal and snack times. I like to tell mothers that truly you are one of the singular most powerful resources your child has in this world, especially your daughter. Your influence is truly profound, and whether it's done consciously or not, you are impacting your daughter's sense of self, her values, what she chooses to prioritize in her own life each and every day. So our influence starts very young in their life, and it goes way past the time when you're no longer in this world. So your daughter has to know too that her body will go through so many journeys in life, right? There's puberty and pregnancy and aging and menopause and physical illness. There's emotional stress and physical stress and social stress. And these take a toll on our body. And so it's so important to give our body that nourishment and to care for it and to treat it how it's meant to be treated. Our approach, when it's more structured, somewhat structured, but relaxed enough, that is when we tend to raise happier and healthier eaters. I want to thank you so much for watching and listening today. And if you have any other topic that you'd love to hear about, please feel free to reach out at any time. My email is marcy, marcy, @atzmi.org. Thank you.